help them sing their songs of hope, to teach the youth that we are one.
Well, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. This is Anthony Caioli. I'm the Regional Director for the Alaska Region Training and Technical Assistance Center. And thank you for joining us today for this National ANA webinar on technology tools for ANA projects. And today's webinar is being hosted by the Alaska Region Training and Technical Assistance Center. We're based here in Wasilla, Alaska, serving the state of Alaska. We also collaborate with all of the other regional TTA centers, and our motto is we are one. I'm the regional director. Been working with tribes and rural municipalities here in Alaska for the last 20 years. Our TTA manager is Angela Camus. Our technology and e-outreach manager is Charles Peel, and our Anchorage Outreach Office Coordinator recently joined us is Junior Gisa. Our moderator in the background is Charles Peel, and he'll be taking care of Q&A. So the Alaska Region TTA Center and all of the other regional TTA centers, Pacific, Western, and Eastern, provide free technical assistance and training to applicants and grantees pursuing ANA funding. We offer free training, project planning and development training, pre-application training, that's just before the application process, and post-award for successful grantees. Our technical assistance consists of project planning and development, which is helping you develop your project concept and description and addressing some of your capacity issues. We provide pre-app review of your rough draft applications. We provide on-site technical assistance once you're funded and unfunded, and we also review your unfunded applications. So we provide a lot of technical assistance to ensure the success of your projects. We also have a wealth of information on community-based project development, implementation, covering the gamut of projects in Native communities throughout the United States. You can go to your regional websites and also the national website to get more information. And each region hosts social media. We have a Google Plus community, native languages. We also have some Facebook pages, and other regions have similar types of social media to engage the communities. So a little bit about ANA. ANA promotes self-sufficiency for Native Americans by providing discretionary grant funding for community-based projects and training and technical assistance to eligible tribes and Native organizations. And ANA's vision is that Native communities are thriving. We have some upcoming webinars. This is a technology tools webinar, but I actually won't be focusing on the social media. We have a whole webinar dedicated to that, which is going to be on December 17th. And that is being hosted by the Pacific Region Training and Technical Assistance Center. So I encourage you to sign up for that. And that's on December 17th, 11 a.m. Alaska time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So the goals for today's webinar is to identify some practical applications of various technology tools that hopefully will provide some immediate value to your organization, and also to give you a high-level overview of some of these tools that are in the industry vernacular are commercially available off the shelf. So it can be pretty overwhelming because there are so many tools out there. So we've focused in on a few, but just to give you a flavor of what's available out there, and maybe give you some ideas of ways of using tools to enhance your project implementation. And I'm the lead presenter today. Like I said, I'm the regional director and also the president and CEO for 3Star. 3Star is an Alaskan Native Village Corporation-owned subsidiary based out of Perryville, Alaska, an Alutiiq village. And we have a guest presenter, Michael Nanitskak Bach. I may have given that a Yupik pronunciation, but it's actually Suchtun. He's the language program manager of the Alutiiq Museum and Archaeological Repository. So welcome, Michael. He'll be presenting at the tail end of this, and I'm really excited for him to share the app that he is implementing. So like I said, this is a high-level overview. The goal here isn't to make you proficient in any one of these applications, but we just wanted to introduce the concept of some of these different tools and how they might potentially be applicable for your project, and maybe also to get you a little bit excited about the opportunities out there with some of the tech tools. But to start off, a lot of these tools that are available online, they have free versions, and a lot of times what we see is people take advantage of those and they set up personal accounts. As tribal and native organizations, while that might be okay to test a tool, for officially implementing it, we don't recommend that you use personal accounts, mainly because the organization doesn't control or have ownership of those accounts. So whenever you're setting up these tools online, be sure to use your company emails for registering, and make sure that you can register your organization or your company in the company's name and not as a personal account. And the other thing I wanted to point out is a lot of times in the subscription plans, you'll see individual versus business or enterprise. And the main difference is that with business and enterprise accounts, you're able to manage multiple users. So that can be very helpful for adding and removing people and so on. And a disclaimer, we're sharing several different tools, but we're not endorsing any of these tools, and we're not stating that ANA is affiliated with any of these. This is purely for educational and instructional purposes. So the way that we're going to introduce a few of these tools is to use sort of the ANA grant cycle that we use in our trainings. I'm going to talk about the startup phase, creating your grant file, addressing some data tracking issues, staffing, some project management and reporting tools, community involvement tools, and then some sustainability tools. And then after that, we'll have Michael's presentation. So the first thing we're going to start off with is Google Apps for nonprofits. Now this is an interesting program that Google Apps has created, and it's actually gone international. Although a lot of the features some of the features are only available in the U.S. and Canada. Basically, the Google Apps for nonprofits is a suite of tools that is cross-cutting for all the phases of your ANA grant implementation. So it's a good suite of tools to look at initially. It offers organizations free access to Google tools to help you reach new donors and volunteers and work more efficiently, and also to tell your nonprofit story. And that last piece is something we just learned more about with this program. They offer free advertising, and there's also a nonprofit YouTube channel, so it's pretty exciting. Some of the tools that are part of this free suite is the core Google Apps, the calendar, the Gmail, and that would be a company-based, domain-based Gmail, Google Drive, and within Google Drive there's the forms, the docs, which is like Word docs, slides, which is like PowerPoint slides, and sheets, which is similar to Excel sheets. So it gives you the full range of tools to be really productive, especially if you've got teams that are scattered across the country, which is increasingly the case for all of us. And it provides you 30 gigabytes of free online storage, online collaboration, 24/7 support. So this is the free version, but it provides you an enterprise business type account, so you can manage and control security. There's some really awesome security features in this Google Apps admin account, where you can, like if people are using their smartphones, you can literally wipe the Gmail data from that remote smartphone. So it provides that added security as well. One unique feature of the Google for Nonprofits program is the free AdWords, and this basically, if you qualify and you enroll and get into this program, it'll provide your organization, your nonprofit organization, $10,000 per month in in-kind AdWords advertising. And a lot of you are probably familiar with a lot of the ads that you get when you're doing searches and so on, often usually the right side. Well, that's kind of how this works. You create your Google Ads account, and you choose relevant keywords, and then as people are clicking, that's how they track and monitor or track basically your usage, and you get up to 10,000 per month, and it's based on the clicks. So that's a pretty exciting feature of this program. Google for Nonprofits YouTube channel is another unique aspect of this, and it's just like the regular YouTube, but one very cool feature of this is there's a donations module that goes with this, and your organization can solicit donations using that feature. The eligibility for this software follows the same eligibility for Google for Nonprofits, and that is that your organization has to be a 501c3, and unfortunately this is not for government entities, but I don't know yet whether there's an exemption for tribes or not. But we have many nonprofits that would qualify for this program, so that's exciting. Okay, so that's a brief overview of Google for Nonprofits, which, like I said, cuts across all of these aspects of managing your grant. Now I'm going to get into some more specific examples, and we're going to start at the grant startup and grant file stage. So when we do our post-award training, we teach successful applicants to create their ANA grant file, and usually the original hard copies are in the accounting office, and then we talk about creating backup copies for the program office. So basically the concept that I want to introduce here is not to get away from the hard copies, because those are needed for the main office, but for the backup copies and for the program people that are working on them, it's very useful to actually have digital versions of those that they can access. And there are multiple tools out there available to basically create a online file server for your documents. There's Microsoft OneDrive, there's Google Drive, Dropbox, and there's many others as well. So basically what you could do is you could use one of these tools to create a organization account and load your grant documents into that account. And what's usually a common feature for all of these is that you're able to manage access to those files on an individual basis, and usually what you do is you share either a file or a folder with a specific email address. So it makes it very nice to manage and control access to those files. Another possibility is to create a reporting calendar. You know, many organizations have multiple grants, so it's nice to have a master reporting calendar of all of your due dates, and Google Calendar and Outlook Calendar are great for those. So just a few examples. This is a Google Calendar snapshot, and in Google Calendar you can create multiple types of calendars. You can customize who has access to those. You can make them private, you can make them public, and like I said, a practical thing you could use this for is to load your reporting due dates for your team or for a specific grant. So that's something to think about. And then I mentioned there's different types of online file storage tools out there. Dropbox is a pretty commonly used one, and it works across all devices. You know, it's a web-based tool, so it's cloud-based. It's accessible 24/7, and like a lot of the other tools, you can provide custom access on an email basis to individuals that you approve. And then Google Drive is another one that is used a lot, and it's similar to Dropbox, and it can be used across all devices as well. So, question for the group: what software application have you found most useful for online file storage? This is a little poll question, and if you could take just a moment and share a few that you guys use for managing your projects, just type it in the chat box off to the right side, and I'll just give a moment if some of you would like to share some of the tools that you think are useful, and then we'll move on. So I'm seeing one for Dropbox, another one for Dropbox and Google Drive, Dropbox. So for those of you that are using Google Drive, like I mentioned in the very beginning, I highly recommend that hopefully you've got that set up as a organizational account and not a personal individual account. We have actually recently here in Alaska several organizations that I work with that were using personal Gmails and personal Drive. When those individuals left the organization, the tribe lost access to all of that data and all those documents. So I really encourage you to look at getting official company-owned or business-owned, organization-owned accounts for those. All right, so some data tracking tools. This is another aspect of grant management that's extremely important. And there's a lot of tools out there that can help you capture some of the data that you need to be able to show the effectiveness of your projects, and also to help you in your reporting, your project reporting. So when we teach setting up during our postal award, we talk about different types of data that you should be collecting. This is not exhaustive, but these are some ideas. You need to be tracking your non-federal share, your leveraged resources, your partnerships, your impact indicator, your actual activities, your results and benefits, your evaluation data, like if you're doing a language program and you have to document fluency, typically we see pre and post award, or not, sorry, pre and post assessments. And then documenting community participation, which is really extremely important. And that could include meeting attendance, sign-in sheets, donated labor hours, newsletters, media coverage, video content, and then emails containing project praise. Those are good to collect, and other testimonials. And a lot of that could be coming in as audio, as written. Might be an article you see in the newspaper. So how do you capture all those different types of data? Well, there are really a whole range of tools out there that could help you do that. Google Forms and SurveyMonkey. Most people are familiar with SurveyMonkey, but Google Forms is a similar tool, and I think it works pretty much. It's effective, just like SurveyMonkey is effective, and it does automatic data analysis with your data. You can use the Google Forms to administer surveys, or SurveyMonkey do assessment tests and questionnaires for your program evaluation. You could also use these forms to capture in-kind community labor. So if you imagine, you could create a form, put it on your website, and every time someone does something or participates in one of your sessions, you could just have them go online and document that. Another effective tool, or several different effective tools for tracking your data, are Google Sheets and Microsoft's version of online Excel. And most people use just regular Excel to track their data, but the benefit of using the web version of these is that you then have the ability to have members of your team collaborate on that same spreadsheet. Now that can be really powerful if your team is spread out and you want them to help you update and maintain your data tracking sheets. It's really useful to be able to have multiple people be able to do that with you, and that's where the web versions of these tools, of these spreadsheets, can really be effective. Another simple tool and application that you could, if you walked away with one thing that might be helpful for your program, we all are trying to track our activities and the good things that we're doing. There's a couple of very useful tools, Evernote and Microsoft OneNote, that are basically they're online journals, and you can use these tools to basically as a data dump to put testimonials in, recordings of events, emails of project praise. So they're really practical for that. And the one that I'm going to share with you right now is called Evernote. This is available on your desktop, but also on your phone. Now, what's cool about this is if you can imagine you're trying to track, like you're trying to create a project journal, you can use the phone app to take photos of some of your documents. You can do web clippings. You can record audio, and it'll go right into your account. Or you can just do regular text notes. So there's all different ways of capturing the different types of data that you might encounter when you're documenting your project history. And Evernote, as well as Microsoft OneNote, are really very useful for doing that. And it's flexible because it can be done at your desktop, which is this version, or right from your phone. And this is a screenshot from my own phone, the Evernote mobile app. The other thing that I really like about Evernote is that you can also email to the account and add content that way, so it's very flexible. And then I mentioned Google Forms for doing assessments. These forms are really easy to create in Google, and it's very low cost. And if you have the nonprofit version, it's free. All right, so we talked about a few data tracking tools. For those that are participating, what's your favorite tech tool for tracking or capturing project data? You could share that in the Dropbox. I'm sorry, in the chat box. Your favorite tech tool for creating a project journal or for tracking your data. Now I know most people use just the desktop Excel, so that's probably right off the bat. But is anybody using any of the web versions of that? And by the way, in a minute I'm going to talk, when I get to the project management, I'm going to show how you can take your regular desktop Excel and import it right into some of these web tools right off the bat. Cool. Let's see, Excel, Outlook, and there's a web version of Outlook now that Microsoft's kind of has been catching up to Google, and in some ways now exceeding Google in some of the functionality with a lot of the web versions of Word, Excel, Outlook. And then I see Michael saying Google Sheets, they have analytics like SurveyMonkey. It makes nice graphics right off the bat. I agree. Okay, staffing tools. So we talked a little bit about data. Now let's talk a little bit about staffing. So staffing is the most critical component, one of the most critical components of and indicators of project success. A lot of organizations, they struggle to get staffing in place after the grant award. And the nice thing is what we're seeing is there's more and more tools out there that are focused in on Native American human resources. It's really exciting. The couple that I'm going to highlight here is Native Edge, which has been featured at Res 2015. They had a huge booth there and a big launch for that. And then here in Alaska, we just had a recent launch of an app called Lisinga, which is Yupik for incredibly smart. And then another useful tool for staffing is you can use Google Forms for your application process, because it basically loads everything into a spreadsheet for you, so you can look at your different applicants in a spreadsheet. And then I'm going to just briefly show a Smartsheet, which is the same thing. It's got a form just like Google Forms, but it allows you to attach documents to that as they're filling out the form, so they could attach their resume. So that's a nice feature. All right, so briefly, Native Edge. This, like I said, there was a huge launch at Res 2015, and I took a look at this, and it looks like right now what they're focused on is the jobs aspect of this. So it might be, this might be a, I haven't actually seen it implemented, but it's it's a tool that's being used to for job seeking and for posting job opportunities within the Native American community. So that's pretty exciting. I haven't looked at the other functionality. I think similar to this one in Alaska, I think that these tools have a bigger vision of what they want to do, but it looks like what they're really focused on initially is more of the Native American jobs data bank functionality. So like with Lisinga here in Alaska, they're wanting to do, have a lot of, kind of be a one-stop shop as well, but they're focused initially on the career and job postings. And these are specifically for Native Americans. So these are good tools out there that are trying to hone in on the human resources available within the Native American community for your projects. Some tools for your recruiting and your applicant phase. You could use a Google form, like I said, to have people apply. Or there's a tool out there called Smartsheet, and it's just like a Google form, but it's got this upload feature that I was mentioning where you could have them apply with this form and also attach their resume, and then it goes into basically a spreadsheet as well. So that's a real nice feature as well. We use this for recruiting our technical consultants for the Alaska region. So what tools are you using right now, and this is for the chat box, for either recruiting or onboarding Native Americans and Native staff? Curious to see a few responses. So we got Mr. Okleosik in Nome says he uses the Alaska Job Center. Anybody using any of the Native American databanks out there? See a couple of people typing, so I'll just wait one moment and see if we get any other responses. I know here in Alaska, the regional corporations, they have their own shareholder databases. So, and I think Lisinga is trying to tap into those shareholder databases. So I'm not sure in the lower 48. Julia is saying web-based. And Roxana Kashtok saying they send out notices via community radio stations and also on their website. So just using the website. Craigslist. We have used Craigslist as well for recruiting, and I mentioned that as one of the. I think I mentioned it before, but that's another tool. Although I don't know, I think that's here in Alaska. We have Craigslist in like Anchorage, and then there's one for Southeast Alaska, but a lot of our villages aren't covered in Craigslist. Okay, I'll move on. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about project management and reporting tools. And thanks everybody for sharing some of the tools you're using. Facebook, yeah, definitely. LinkedIn, I didn't put LinkedIn on there. I don't know how extensively LinkedIn is used with our Native organizations. I think I'm seeing more and more, but that's another one that's common. So project management and reporting. Okay, so basically, you get your project funded, you've got an objective work plan, and you have to track all your activities, and you have to report on that in Grant Solutions. But for practical purposes, most people, they're not necessarily, they're not going to Grant Solutions every day as the main method for tracking their data. They're using it to report. So a lot of people are just using Excel spreadsheets. See that very often. And what I wanted to introduce is kind of taking that one step further. So you can imagine, you take your OWP and you put it into an Excel format. And like I said, I see a lot of organizations do this to track their activities. This is an effective way to do this, but it requires that you're doing monthly or weekly meetings and getting updates verbally from your team, and then one individual is coming in and updating the status of these. So that's the only weakness, if there is a weakness, to just using the desktop version of Excel. But the minute that you take your OWP that you've put into an Excel spreadsheet and load it into the web version of that, now suddenly you have the ability to share that with your core team members, or if you have a project person in another village or another location, they can log in and add their activity updates quickly and easily, more easily than potentially going into Grant Solutions. So moving from desktop to a web version of your OWP can be helpful in helping you to track a lot of that data. So you have different ways of doing this. You can take your Excel and you can import it right into the Microsoft's web version of Excel, and it's quick, easy. There's also the Google version of this. You can take your Excel, your desktop Excel work plan that you've developed, and you can load it, import it straight into Google Sheets, and it can convert it into the web version that Google uses for Sheets, and then you've got the sharing capability. And with Google Sheets, you can make this totally private. You can share with just one or two individuals. When you click the share button, you have to put the company emails of folks that you want to share it with. So it makes for a nice collaborative tool for tracking your data. And then a tool that we use here at 3-Star is Smartsheet. It's just like Google Sheets and Excel Online, and you can take that same Excel desktop file and load it right into Smartsheet. The difference is that it gives you a few different capabilities, like you can add some status columns. You can do like red, green, yellow balls, or you can do these status % ones, and then it adds a Gantt chart that goes with it, and then as you're completing these, it'll show just like a regular Gantt chart like in Microsoft Project. It'll show the status complete. The other thing is, in Smartsheet, you can send one of these rows to a specific person and say, hey, can you update this row? What's the status on hiring and the project manager? You can send this single row out to a single individual and say, can you update that status field? So that's kind of cool. That's a level of functionality that you don't have with just the desktop Excel. And there's nonprofit versions of Smartsheet as well. All right, now I was just on a site visit, and our office here, we're really into Post-it notes. The only problem with Post-it notes is it's great if you're, for the folks in your office, but if you got like 2 or 3 different sites, how does everybody post their Post-it notes on the wall? So we came across an app called RealTimeBoard, and it allows you to customize these. You can basically create a wall version of your charts, like your to-do boxes and your in-progress boxes, which is what I've seen in some organizations. And then it literally lets you post what looks like a Post-it note and move them and drag them back and forth. And this is web-based, so you can share this real-time board with your team members. So if you're really into Post-it notes and the Excel doesn't excite you as much as the Post-it notes and the colors, then you might want to explore RealTimeBoard. And this integrates with Google Drive, so you can add files to the board straight from Google Drive. There's many other project team applications out there. Basecamp is a very common one. There's another app called Asana. So you can do some research, and if you want to go beyond just a shared Excel, you can get pretty sophisticated, but it also adds to the complexity and the learning curve. All right, so quick poll question: what What tools are you using? Well, we'll assume most people are using the desktop Excel for project management. But what other tools are people using for managing your projects that you found useful? If you could share that in the chat box, we'd really appreciate it. I'll just give this a moment because we've got a couple more. Okay, well, someone's Alutic Museum looks like they're using Asana. It's a very great tool, very user-friendly. And Asana, I mentioned that, is an app that you can use on your desktop, in your web browser, or on your phones. So cool. Thanks, Michael. All right. We're going to hit community involvement and then sustainability. And I'm going to speed this up just a little bit because I want to make sure that Michael can have time for his presentation. So let's talk a little bit about community involvement. All right. I mentioned your project journal using Evernote or Microsoft OneNote. Those are ways to track community involvement and participation by using audio notes, webcam notes, screenshot notes, and more. There are some other interesting tools out there, and I just want to throw these out because it's getting more into leveraging the internet to be more effective in your programs. Now, we don't have a lot of examples of this, and I haven't seen a lot of this implemented, or really very many instances of this being implemented in native communities, but these are becoming increasingly popular. So there are applications out there for managing your volunteers, where you can have them register online and track what they're doing and their hours online using the volunteer management apps. Another interesting concept that actually was started after the recession, 2008, is the concept of Timebanks. Now what this is, it's a form of crowdsourcing. In other words, it's a way to get help from the broader community on specific tasks. Now, the difference is although it's it's basically people volunteering their time, the idea with the time bank is that if you volunteer an hour of your time, then that's tracked in your time bank, in your account, and then if somebody else needs help, they can reciprocate. So instead of paying people a dollar amount for services, you're basically exchanging hours that you've accrued or built up in the time bank. So if I donate 10 hours, then I can expect someone else in the time bank community to give me 10 hours of help down the road when I need it. So it's kind of a fascinating concept that really has been exploding across the country, and it's usually done on a local neighborhood basis. So that time bank is a form of crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing is a way to obtain information, input, or services on a project by enlisting a number of people, paid or unpaid, and usually using the internet. So we have a common example most of you are probably familiar with is Wikipedia, which is a large-scale example of crowdsourcing. Everybody's contributing to building that knowledge base. And this is actually Michael's application that he's going to share is a form of crowdsourcing, but it's done on a restricted basis. The crowd isn't the entire general public. It's a more narrowly defined basically tribal membership crowd. So I'm calling that restricted crowdsourcing, but I don't know that that's actually officially a term out there. So I mentioned time banks. Time banks are a way of giving and receiving to build support networks. And like I said, 1 hour helping another earns 1 time bank hour or a credit. A time bank is formed whenever individuals or organizations agree to earn and spend time bank hours. So one possibility is, if you have a couple organizations, if one organization is donating some time helping another, then you could track that in the time bank and then expect that to be reciprocated down the road. It's kind of a pay it forward concept. The Time Bank app, Timebanks USA, they've developed it's called Community Weaver, and it's it's a tool that's getting it's been years in development, continuously being refined, and it's used to manage these exchanges. So in terms of community involvement, I mentioned there's some tools out there for managing just regular volunteers, and then there's the new time banking concept. And I'm just curious, yes or no, whether any of your organizations could envision a time bank actually working in your community. Do you think that would actually work? That's just a question. Yes or no? So I see one yes. Sounds interesting, but would take a lot of education with community members. Yes, I totally agree. And it would require a time bank coordinator. So there's definitely, you would need to invest some resources into managing the time bank. And that is one of the discussion items that comes up in the time bank forums, is how do you launch and how do you get people to devote time to coordinate these time banks. That's usually the implementation challenge. So cool. All right, lastly is sustainability, and then we'll do Michael's presentation. So sustainability, I put it at the end of the cycle here, but really that's something that should be, throughout you should be considering that throughout your whole project implementation. Now, similar to crowdsourcing, we're seeing just recently more and more crowdfunding apps, and I'll explain what that is. I think probably, even I see here in Alaska, we're seeing more individuals using like GoFundMe for medical emergencies, but that's for individuals. Now what we're seeing is the same concept, but geared and designed for nonprofits. So we found a couple of these that are out there, Razoo and Causes, that will allow you to involve your communities and benefactors in crowdfunding for community projects. What is crowdfunding? Crowdfunding is the practice of funding a project or a venture or a need by raising many small amounts of money from a large number of people. So like I said, I think probably most of you are familiar with apps like GoFundMe for medical emergencies. I see that on Facebook a lot here in Alaska. And this is the same concept, but at a nonprofit or native organization level, where you have a project and you leverage your 501c3 status to get small little individual donations to help fund your need. So Razoo is just one that we found, and amazingly they've raised more than $450 million for nonprofits, and it's also a 501c themselves. So the most donations are tax deductible, and of course always consult your tax advisor for specific deductibility rules. So just curious, have any of you used any crowdfunding tools for your organization in the past? If you could type that in, love to hear. Okay, it is a new concept, so, and that's why we're putting it out there. But it's one of those things where we're taking the internet and trying to leverage that in new ways that we haven't thought about before. So that's really the goal of this webinar, is to start to get you to think about, okay, how can we use the internet to help us do things we weren't able to do before. So Mr. Okleasik said they've done it on a student basis, but not with an organization. So cool. All right. Well, I'm very happy to present to you our guest speaker today, Michael Nanitskak Bach, and maybe Michael can actually pronounce it the Sukhstun way, because I speak Yukhstun. Michael has a MA in Northern Studies from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. He's an intermediate fluent Sukhstun speaker. He has extensive archive management experience and currently manages the development of the archive and catalog and assistant outreach activities for the Alutiiq Museum. Now, he's going to talk about an app that they're using that's in the vernacular as a content management system. But what I wanted to introduce to all of you is really that it's actually a kind of crowdsourcing. And so I've kind of interjected that concept into here so that it sort of fits into this overall framework. So Michael, why don't you take it from here, and I think we can. You're in presenter. You should be able to click the slides. If not, let me know.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Anthony, and really good work on the pronunciation of Nanitskak. You were right in the right zone. So this slide just shows where the Alutiiq Museum is. If any of you are unaware where we're at, we're in Kodiak, Alaska. And yeah, if you're ever in the area, please come and look us up. It would be fun to chat about this more in depth, but I'll dive right in because I think it aligns with some of the ideas that Anthony was talking about at the beginning about community involvement and sustainability, and I'll share more about that when I get to it. But like Anthony said, I'm the language program manager here at the Alutiiq Museum, and my primary work is focused on a grant that we received from the National Science Foundation documenting endangered languages called the Nakan Natmen Project. The primary project goal that I'll be talking about today is an issue of access. I'm sure many of you can relate. Museums, tribes, libraries have a wealth of resources, but many of them are difficult to access simply because people may not know what there is, or there's just not the staffing to grant you access to those items. One way that we're tackling this issue of access is by using Mukurtu. It's kind of a difficult word to pronounce, but it is pronounced. I gave that little cheat sheet there in the first bullet point as Mukurtu. This is a content management system, or CMS, that was developed in Northwest Territories of Australia. And something that's really special about this is that it has a lot of different ways to manipulate access. Something that I'll be talking about a little bit more in depth will be the ability to crowdsource your content, or as Anthony said earlier, restricted crowdsourcing. And that means that not everybody can just go on and listen to these items and comment on them, but you're asking a specific group of people within your community, or more broadly speaking, a specific group of people, wherever they may be, to access this information and comment on it. Like I said, one of our primary goals was access, and something that Mukurtu really embodies, which is very special, is the idea of cultural protocols and communities to control who is accessing those. So cultural protocols begs to answer the question of why are people accessing your information? And the communities would be who is accessing your information. So I mentioned that this was developed in the Northwest Territories of Australia because it was a way for the community to put in very strict protocols into their data management structure. To give an example of this, for example, they may have stories or songs that only married women have access to. So you can build a system of restrictions around those resources so that only married women can listen to those songs or hear those stories. And you can do this in very nuanced ways. And if you want more information about the in-depths of Mukurtu, I just wanted to share our recent media coverage in the ADN, where there's a few links in the article so that you can kind of see what the ADN says about it and get a little bit more information. But why is Mukurtu important? So for many of us, we're coming from small organizations who are thinking about or engaging in grant-funded activities. So Mukurtu presents a couple of different options, or a couple of different attributes that I think are worth noting. First is that it's open source, meaning that it's different from proprietary software where a single company owns it and nobody has access to the foundational attributes of the specific software. Mukurtu, on the other hand, being open source, means that if your organization or you are versed in coding, you can go in and change the foundational structure of the software. So that adds a level of sustainability to it from an archival perspective. Similarly, it's also free because it's open source. However, I ask, is anything really free? Because many of our organizations may not have IT staff who have devoted time to set up a software like this and make it user-friendly for our specific organizations. And in this way, we have found at the Alutiiq Museum that Mukurtu is particularly designed to support grant-funded projects. It's grant-friendly because what they've done is they've created a one-time fee. So in our NSF grant, for example, we paid that one-time fee. We had somebody help us set up the website and help us get started with importing our spreadsheets and making sure that we knew exactly what we were doing, and will continue to support us for the life of this website, whether that be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. We've paid that one-time fee, and we never need to find sustaining funding to continue to make sure that that information continues to be available. Therefore, that makes it appropriate for us. It's similarly culturally appropriate because we're sharing information online that maybe everybody doesn't need to have access to. We're able to build in that infrastructure of protocols and restrictions so that we can still crowdsource the information so that people can comment on recordings or share information, which I'll show more about in the next slide. But it's just not open to the general public. Not everybody needs to have access to all of our recordings. Similarly, we needed no new tools. We're able to use our catalogs, which are done in Excel, and import them directly into the software. Similarly, we're able to export directly from the software into Excel. So we're not having to change the total, the operating protocols that we have at the museum in order to successfully implement this software. So I wanted to share, this is a screenshot of an item that we have available on our online language portal. And you can see here, I think I have a pointer. There we go. You can see here that you can add a subject if you log in and you've been granted access. You can write a subject and write some information in the comment field. So to talk about this more specifically, we see here in the description that this item is a recording that's mostly in Alutiiq with information about rocks, bears, and fairy tales. Clearly that doesn't tell us a whole lot about the item, but if somebody logged on and became a registered user and wanted to comment on this and said, hey, I recognize this person's voice, this is my uncle, I remember this story, here's what the story is about, or I also remember things that aren't in this recording, here's more information about this. They're able to share that in this comment box and submit it to an administrator. And this is a way that the museum can crowdsource the collection of metadata or descriptive information about the items in our collection. So it's a really useful tool when you're trying to tackle a huge amount of recordings, but maybe don't have the staff power or the funding to do that all internally, to send it out and have people engage with your activity or engage with your products. So in this way, there's kind of a call to action built into this software. It's a social media-like environment that many people are comfortable with. Many of our youth and people in our communities engage in Facebook and know how to comment. And Erica, I see that you asked how much staff time is needed, and are you using to moderate the comments? So that's a great question. We haven't needed a lot of staff time. A lot of people will comment, and I will go into the back end of the website and see exactly what they commented on, and I can either approve or deny it. Of course, somebody may be a registered user that may not write something that is maybe necessarily appropriate for us to integrate into our metadata, and those types of comments will be denied. They'll still be held on the website, but we won't integrate them into our catalog. So it's very minimal, and that's what's really exciting about it, is it's much less than if I were to be going in as the project manager doing all of this as an individual. So if you'd like to access this and kind of play around with it, and you can feel free to become a user, and I'll approve you if to specific communities to make sure that you can kind of get a better feel. You can go to the museum's website at alutiiqmuseum.org, and at the top of the screen, you can go to the research tab, and click under Language Collections, which will bring you to the Alutiiq Museum's instance of the Mukurtu content management system. You can also visit Mukurtu directly by going to mukurtu.org. Or, of course, feel free to contact me at my email address. I see that I got cut off there. That's michael@alutiiqmuseum.org. So feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call and ask any questions. But I see that we're getting close to noon, so I don't want to keep you too long. But I see there's one more question from Andrew. Has anybody from the Tlingit language community been using Mukurtu? Not that I'm aware of, but I could look into that. And I see that Charles has also shared the link to our language collections page directly there. So I think that that's all that I have right now. Here's my contact information again. But we're getting close to noon. So Anthony, I'll pass it over to you. And if anybody has any more questions, feel free to email me.
Awesome, Guyana Michael. That's a really cool application, and I don't think we had a clip here. Actually, it's gone. But the Anchorage Daily News just did an article on the Alutiiq Museum's application, and that's actually how I found out about it. So, yes, definitely, we will provide copies of this presentation. We will make the video 508 compliant, but we'll also send out a PDF of the PowerPoint. And at this point, just to recap, we've kind of introduced a lot of different tools out there, and the goal was to get you excited about tapping into technology, especially on the internet, to help with your program implementation. And I want to thank Michael for sharing about your tool. That's very exciting, and I think there's a lot of applicability to the concept there that the Alutiiq Museum is doing, which is to tap into the broader tribal/native community for help in Michael's case in documenting the repository there. But like you could easily apply that to other applications, like if you need help on specific projects. So we hope to see more of this sort of crowdsourcing, or broader collaboration that the internet allows us in the future. And if you would please send us or fill out the evaluation form that is now in the chat box. That's critical for us. We are constantly trying to improve our webinars. And I guess I'll leave it at that. We will not be having, well, we have one more webinar, social media, for 2015 before ANA launches the 2016 webinar schedule. So if I don't hear from any of you, Alusi Stuak Chikichi, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays from the Alaska region, and Guyana for participating today. Biochi. Thank you.
From far we've come, we are one, and far we'll go to help them sing their songs of hope, to teach the youth that we are one.